I'll do one more before I call the band back up for our finale, Whip You Into a Frenzy. I've never been able to whip anybody in a frenzy before. This is fun, isn't it? This is a song I wrote a while back. It's called Drumheller Circle. Thanks, Mom. I wrote this for a bunch of inmates in Drumheller Prison. I used to, when I was a little boy, my dad was the chaplain at Drumheller Prison, and the inmates used to gather every Saturday afternoon to have these jam sessions, and I was really wanting to learn how to play guitar, and when the inmates heard about it, they told my dad, you know, well, bring him in, we'll teach him stuff, and so every Saturday, my dad would deposit me in the chapel with all these murderers and things. And I mean, I was just a little guy, you know, and I was just really quite awestruck by these guys, you know, real criminal types. And of course, they'd play it up and show me, you know, bullet hole wounds and stuff like that. Now I think back, they were probably just zits or something, you know. But it was, I guess they had a naive audience, so. But they taught me how to play. They were these great country players, eh? Any Chad Atkins fans here? No? Yeah? Well, it wasn't like that, but it was kind of in that vein, you know. It was, I have so many gifts over the years that have come from knowing those guys, you know. I mean, obviously my music, and so much of it came from those years, early years. And another thing is just the sheer... There's an honesty that you find in a prison, ironically, that you kind of don't find anywhere else. It's very strange, but I suppose if you got a record in your jail, there's no sense pretending you're pious, you know. There's a problem there, you know. And so these guys, you know, and they develop this whole sort of community in this church, and they almost have like they wouldn't call it this, but you know, deacons and stuff like that, you know. They've got a bit of an edge, you know. I remember my dad's first convert. Of course, being a Baptist, it was very, very important for him to lead folks to the Lord, and I agree that's a wonderful and noble task. And there's this one guy, big bruiser type guy, you know, and the kind with, you know, Mom, you know, tattooed on his arm, but it's crossed out, you know, and really ugly, you know. And this guy had this powerful experience of the Lord Jesus Christ. I mean, it just astounding. And he knew that his life was changed forever. He would never be the same. He was just on fire. And he had to tell the other inmates. And so I remember him asking my dad whether or not he could give his testimony. And Dad, you know, said, sure, that'd be wonderful. And you know, this was new to my dad too. And he didn't really think of, you know, prepping the guy at all. He just gave him a slot, you know, right after the offering. And that's a joke. There's no offering in prison there. Nobody ever gets that one. But so the time came, the dread Sunday came, and I forget the guy's name, Ed or something. Very nervous, but he takes a deep breath, and my dad calls him up, and he makes his way to the front, and he turns around, and he looks at the inmates, and using every four-letter word I've ever heard, he described to them the glory of God. And I was a little surprised, you know. I hadn't heard God talk like that before, and he was on the cutting edge of a whole new thing. And I remember looking over at my dad to see if he was going to respond or what's he going to do. And my dad was just bursting his buttons with pride. He didn't hear any of the words. And, you know, my mom was out cold in the aisle right there. And an inmate made me my first guitar amp. But I was 8 or 9 years old, and I wanted to play electric, I wanted to rock, you know, and I couldn't afford one of those really nice Sears amps, and so this inmate, I don't know where he found the parts, but he located some material, and he put together this little 5-watt amplifier. It was very, very crude, just kind of tacked onto the side of this wooden box with a little carved speaker in it that was torn. All that came out was solid distortion, and it sounded like the big guys, you know. It was great. It was an inmate that actually got me my first summer job. I was about 16 years old. By this time, we had moved to Stony Mountain. And I was looking for a summer job. I was 16, now I can work. And there's this private golf course 8 miles down the highway called Bell Acres. And the plum job for a 16-year-old boy was to get a job washing the golf clubs for these rich folks, because apparently they tipped really well. And so I went and I applied for the job, and I didn't get it. Apparently I was underqualified, and I was disappointed, because I was really looking forward to the job. And I remember that Sunday I was in the prison, and I was talking to this guy, and he'd been a bit of an underworld character in his earlier years. And he asked me, well, what are you doing for the summer, Steve? And I said, well, I'm looking for work. And so, well, where have you looked? And I says, well, I applied this recently down at Bell Acres Golf Course down the way. And he said, did you get the job? And I says, no, I didn't. He said, phone back tomorrow. And I got the job, And God is so good, with his. Anyway, I wrote this for those guys. This is called the Drumheller Circle.